can I have some volunteers to share their thoughts? Go ahead, Megan.
I just want class just to be able to understand chemistry. I have a hard time with it. And then after...
Can you guys in the back here?
After school, when I finished the nursing program, me and my husband and my son moved to Florida and continue my nursing.
Fantastic. Yeah, go ahead, Taylor.
Read all on the table.
Okay, so I'm going to say read chemistry, because it is a language. Great, Carmen?
Be able to balance different equations.
Okay, so we can get some specifics. So let's think about specifics, but let's also think a bit bigger as well for maybe some skills and those kinds of things. In the back, maybe Cassandra? Okay, so better at stoichiometry, kind of balancing equations, and I'll kind of add that under here. Is that what you said? Okay. And then I saw the stunt woman also raising her hand. Awesome. Did anyone build off of that and talk about interpreting like science in the news? Does that seem valuable?
So after chemistry as it pertains to metabolism, digestion, and absorption of food.
So metabolism, absorption. So us medicinal chemists, we talked about ADME, absorption, distribution, metabolism, excretion. So similar kind of properties. Great.
This will help me better understand some of the article structure.
Great. And maybe we can even add as well as scholarly articles, non-scholarly articles. A lot of times in the newspaper you'll see reports about scholarly articles, but they can be really difficult to digest.
So I'm going to go with what do you want when you use college?
Sure.
I'm going to make it a little broader, and that since I'm a musician, it's always been a freelancer. I want job security.
Sweet.
I'm sure a lot of you fellow nursing students understand.
That's fantastic. That's really great. Dustin?
I would like to learn enough to create my own ideas about chemistry.
Fantastic. Maybe I'll put science more broadly because chemistry is a part of that, maybe? Yeah. Jay?
I want to know what medicines I'm giving my patients, because I never know. And I just hope.
I'm not sure if I'm using the right word, comprehension. Something, I'm missing. I'm even going to say implications of drugs being dosed or something like that. Yeah, there's two different levels to that, right? There's like the actual quantity, which is the dosage, and then there's what it is that you're giving and how that interacts with the body. Great.
I want to better understand like the world around me, I guess. Like the way things were always just fascinated me. Like why is duct tape sticky and why does it like that?
Fantastic. Yeah. What's your name again?
Dylan.
Dylan, great. If you want to add it to the backside after the comment, that way I can see regardless of which way it's pointing.
Okay.
Thanks.
What I wanted to get from this class and after college is how I can apply chemistry to my own degree field of environmental health science, because chemicals do affect the environment, and it can widen my tool set in solving problems.
Fantastic.
with chemicals.
So I'm going to kind of put tool set up here at the top too. A couple other comments or anyone else that wants to share?
So I'm looking for a stronger foundation, basically to better understand chemistry outside of, I work in the analytical lab, and so I want to have a better understanding outside of their techniques and methods.
Fantastic. So if anyone is in Samantha's lab, you know that you go to her for techniques. Because she's going to be awesome at that. So strength and foundations, is it you're thinking more knowledge-wise or?
Yeah, more knowledge outside of just the, like I said, the techniques and methods I learned at work.
Great. So I'll say in concepts, but it probably applies further than that. All right. Anyone want to throw in one last one? All right. I didn't hear anyone say they want to learn how to regurgitate information. I didn't hear anyone say that they want to get really good at test-taking strategies and then data dump after they're done with their tests.
We do that anyways.
We're already good at that, right? So let's keep that in mind. A lot of these are skills as opposed to memorization of terms. Learn how to balance an equation is a skill if we understand it, or it can be a memorization tool if we just want to do enough to get by. There's a lot of apply, there's a lot of read and understand, there's a lot of creating ideas, strength and foundation, apply. A lot of these are higher order cognitive skills. They're not like the basement stuff, the really simple, really useless stuff. I'm glad we're on the same page about that. So let's ask a question that's related to one that we heard about job security. I think it was Eleanor that said this. She wants to be employable, right? She wants to have job security. So why don't you make a list now? What do you think your employers will want you to be able to do? Or if you're going to go to graduate school after here, what do you think they're looking for you to be able to do? Just write down a few ideas of what you think your employers or your graduate school is looking for when they're selecting candidates. A lot of eyes looking up. Can we get some new voices to volunteer their thoughts?
To be dependable, to be willing to learn new things, because of course you don't know everything coming straight out of college, there's things that you can learn.
Pause. I'm going to let other people jump on the bandwagon before you give everyone else's ideas away. Is that okay? Okay, so dependable and able to learn. Love it. Thanks. Yeah, go ahead. I can't see your name tag. Say again? Okay, and what was your name? Daisy. Great. And what do you mean by knowledgeable?
You want someone's going to learn, someone they can trust and learn what they're doing and apply to what she said earlier about medication.
Okay. So I would maybe phrase that as have foundation knowledge. So while we're talking about a lot of these skills, it is important still to come out of chemistry class with chemistry knowledge. It is important to come out of microbiology with microbiology or a nursing class with those specific skills. All right. So we're not saying that those are that we don't care about those. It is also very important for an employer. Great. Sam? Okay? What does that mean?
I mean, if you're hiring somebody, you're not going to hire the guy with the 3.5.
I think a lot of the people in this room would argue with you. Has anyone in this room been a hiring manager before? Would you all agree with what Sam said?
My dad owns a company, so I disagree.
Okay, so I'm just saying it's controversial that there is some value to having grades that are high, but one of the things I hope that comes out of this conversation is that there's a lot of other skills that they're looking for as well, in addition to doing well in courses. And even if you don't do well in a lot of courses, there's still a lot of ways to show your value, and that's what I want to come out of this conversation. Great.
Well-rounded employee.
What does that mean?
Being knowledgeable in many fields and being able to take on whatever task is done with.
Okay, so some of that is able to learn, but then in addition to that, it's kind of more the broad picture, I think you're talking about, the broader perspective, maybe, instead of just coming in and I have this one skill that I can do really well and that's it.
Yeah.
Great, some other ideas. Yes, in the back. I can't see your name tag, sorry. Sorry again? Arrington, great.
To be adaptable, so be able to problem solve, never stop wanting to learn.
And I'm going to use a different color. Can't read that, can you? Problem solving, huge. And that's part of being adaptable, right? It doesn't matter what the situation is. You need to be able to figure out how to solve problems in a new situation. Fantastic. All right, other ideas? Yeah, Kisa?
Being able to work well with other people.
Fantastic. And there was another one over here somewhere?
She kind of said what I was going to say, be a team player.
Great. Other ideas? Feel like we have a decent list. Ankar?
Critical thinking and being able to connect several different concepts.
Critical thinking is a very hot term. So part of that you described as connecting concepts. Is that what you were thinking, or you said? And so this kind of feeds back into that blue one there, problem solving. If you come out of a class like this and you can regurgitate a whole bunch of terms and you can plug things into formulas, does that get you into a lot of these places? It might if I tested for those skills and that raised your GPA. It might help you in that path, but that's not what employers are usually looking for. So I have a list that I think came out of Forbes, asking a whole bunch of top companies, what is it you're looking for in employees? And this is a set of skills that they identified. So questioning, networking, you can think about it as working in teams, working well with others. Be adaptable, we heard that several times in these conversations. Being proactive, we didn't hear that as much, but maybe critical thinking is part of that. Seeing a problem before someone tells you that it's a problem and being able to counteract that. This goes with the networking as well, so being able to communicate. And believe it or not, a lot of the way that we approach this class, I am going to work on having us develop clearer and clearer versions of communication of what we're thinking when we're talking about technical terms. Analytical skills, looking at some information, figuring out what to do with it. All these kind of could fit under the critical thinking umbrella in some way, shape, or form, but this is a bit more specific. And then this idea of design and testing, so being able to be creative, to take knowledge, to apply it, to come up with new solutions, which I think we heard as well. So these are the types of skills that our employers want. And now I want us thinking about what my role is. Here's a graph that has two different semesters of the exact same course. This is actually a biology course, a large enrollment biology course at the University of Colorado Boulder. And these instructors did a traditional traditional course is the blue bars, which refers to lecture, as you're probably more familiar with it. And then the red bars represent the following semester, where they use the exact same exams, the exact same way of testing students' proficiency, and they did the classroom in an interactive way. So I want you to look at this data and try to draw some conclusions from this. And feel free to talk to your neighbor, see if you come up with similar conclusions to them, and then we'll ask for a whole class report out in a minute. So go ahead and look at the data, try to figure out what can we conclude from this data. Okay, so maybe even defining what is traditional. Because I think that you're getting at that, but I don't know, make sure that you and Megan agree on that definition. I like it how third of the class is a bit hesitant. I don't know if I'm really going to raise my hand and look stupid. Trust me. For now, trust me. And in a week, if it's terrible, if it doesn't work, then you can rebel. So can we hear some conclusions? I want one conclusion per person, and I'd like to hear from people we haven't heard from yet. So if you haven't gotten a chance to share your opinion or your perspective, now would be a great time to do that. Yeah, Stephanie.
It kind of looks to me that the more interactive the class is, the better the score, the more people that have higher scores. Great.
So how did you determine that? What's the basic description of how you determine that? So higher scores dictated by, you see a shift in the red graph to the right of the left graph. Okay, great. What else might we conclude from this? Sarah?
Other people may say something in a different perspective, and that can help other people have different learning styles.
Okay, so you're inferring maybe why the results are the way they are. So let's not jump to the why yet. Let's more focus on just what we can determine from the graph, and then we can have some more discussions about the why. Yes, Jessica.
There seems to be a larger clumping in the 80 to 90 range for the interactive versus the higher 70 to 79 range in the traditional.
Okay, so the majority of the students, the average is somewhere in this range for the traditional, and then for the interactive, it's shifted further right. There's a larger clumping here. Great. There's a couple other findings, one major one. Let's hear from a new voice if we can. We've heard from the same couple people a few times.
The interactive class was more effective.
Okay, by what definition? What do we mean by effective? Great, so can we dig in a little bit deeper? So you're saying two overlapping things there, and I'm going to try to pull them out. It was more effective in that more students had higher grades, but what was kind of implied, what else had she implied in there? Chad? Sorry.
No one in an interactive class got a F.
No one in that interactive class. Be careful, we're not extrapolating to all interactive classes, right? I do interactive classes, and unfortunately I still have students fail. It is not the magic bullet to fix everything. But that's a huge point. For this particular cohort, they had, I don't know what this is, 10% of their students failed this course. And then when they moved to interactive class, they ended up with none of those students failing that class. It's a huge take-home. So just based on these data, what would we like our class to be like? What does it mean to be an interactive class? I heard a couple things. Can we get hands raised so we can get clear voices? Yes, go ahead.
More hands-on.
Okay, so hands-on is one version of interactive, yes. Go ahead.
Promoting discussion.
Promoting discussion. Sorry? Great. Participating, sharing ideas. Jules?
Easier to ask questions.
Okay, so the students actually get to ask questions. Dylan?
Stimulating the brain instead of putting it to sleep.
Okay, so there's this terminology that we use in education called transmissionist learning. Transmission means I'm a transmitter of information, and you're an empty vessel, you're receiving it, right? So it's like that idea, you pour knowledge into someone's head and it stays there. And the evidence shows that's not true. It does not work like that. So in order for people to learn, they have to think, what do I know up until now? What's my previous knowledge? How does new information fit with that? I might have to discuss that with someone else to figure out, maybe it matches, maybe it doesn't. I thought it did, but actually there's a little difference. Why is that? And then you discuss, you figure out what the best solution is to make those two fit, and then you clarify and move forward. Right? So that's how new information is generated. It's called constructivist knowledge. You're constructing your knowledge. I'm not filling you with that knowledge. So an active classroom, it can be tactile, right? Like you're doing things physically and you're manipulating models, that kind of stuff. So lab will be a lot of that, and so that is a form of active learning. But a big part of it is that you're engaging your prior knowledge. You're getting a chance to think about it, to talk about it. So that means that a lot of the time in this class, it's not going to be me telling you what to think or what to do. I'm going to be setting up an environment that facilitates your learning. I'm not going to be telling you what to think. Is that a bit different from what you guys have had before? Maybe you've had classes like this before, and hopefully you can help other students that are maybe a little less comfortable with that, figure out how to succeed in that environment. But that's one of the reasons it's so important that we have 5 facilitators, 6 including me, in this classroom. Is that I'll set up the environment, but it's up to you to work through problems. It's up to you to build your own knowledge, and you can ask lots of questions. You can ask for guidance. We're not going to tell you the answer to a problem. We're going to help you figure out how you have the knowledge you need to apply in order to solve problems. That's what we're going to be doing in this class. So what does it look like on a regular class day? Are you going to come here and sit back and relax and then watch the recordings later? If you miss something, I do record it. So my tablet, there's a few reasons I use it. Right? One is that I can draw on this, or I can have you draw and circle things, and it shows up, and it's recorded. But the other reason is I'm recording everything that goes to the screen and the audio from the tablet. So that means that if you miss something in class, you can just pull up the YouTube recording. There's a link will be a link in our Blackboard that will take you to the playlist, and you can go through any of our classes you wish. If you have to miss class for some reason, you can go and you can catch up. But if you miss class, should you sit back and watch the recording in class? What should you do?
Watch it before you come to class.
So you should watch it before you come to class, but not just sit back and watch it, right? I'll post, a lot of times we'll have an in-class worksheet. I'll post that. Pretend like you're in class. Get out the worksheet, print it off, go through, participate like you were in class. Right? The idea is by sitting and watching, you're not learning. You have to do. So I do provide all the videos so that you do have free access to them anytime you want, but don't cheat yourself. Don't just go and watch it and be like, yeah, I got it. And then the next class you come in and you're like, I don't got it. All right. I have office hours, as do our TAs. So there's times for you to come and catch up. But honestly, some of your best resources in this class are going to be the people sitting around you. So when I think about how to build this course, what I do is I sit down and I list out verbs I want you to be able to do. And these verbs align with some of those that we just saw. So I want you to be able to make predictions. I want you to be able to relate reactivity to what atoms are in a molecule. I want you to make inferences. I want you to explain. I want you to track. I want you to be able to present. Right? These are all the types of things that I want you to be developing in the course of this class. Some of you may be way further along in these than others, and so I ask that if this is something that you feel like you're really strong in, help those around you get those skills as well. By doing that, you're going to be improving yourself as well. So how are we going to get there? If every single class were just like this, and you came in with zero prior knowledge, how much of our class material do you think we're going to get through if we do the same material, but we do it with you having discussions about every single point? Do you think that would be efficient? But what we find is that a lot of traditional lecture is the instructor regurgitating a lot of the facts and knowledge from the book or the pre-reading that they wanted you to do beforehand. So I won't do that. So that means that I will set up assignments for you to do before you come to class. Those assignments will be, they shouldn't be super challenging, and they're set up in a way that if you already have that pre-knowledge that you need, you don't have to do any work. I don't want you wasting your time. I don't want you to have to do a whole assignment before you come to class, and then afterwards go do some more reading, or do reading first. So the way I have it set up is a pre-class quiz. You have 3 attempts. You sit down the pre-class quiz, whenever you're ready, you take it. There's, I don't know, 2, well sometimes they're multi-part, about 3 questions per pre-class quiz. That's what we're going to have as our starting foundation when you come into the next class. So everyone should know these terms, or everyone should have tried to use this equation. That's the kind of level that I want with everyone coming to class, because if I have to start there, we're not going to be able to do anything in class. So you're going to do these pre-class quizzes, and you're going to spend your time working on those. If you get it right the first time, you're done. Show up to class. Don't need to do any reading unless you want to brush up on something. If you don't get them right your first time, you still have 2 more attempts for full credit. Go and either link, if you have the ebook and the homework, link out to the book to read those resources. That might be useful. Or you can Google the topic and then watch a video on it. You can use other resources that you have. Sometimes we have things we hand out in class. Right? But that's a guide for what you need to be able to do when you come to class, and I expect everyone to have that background knowledge when you come in, and if you do, then we can use our class time for interactive learning. So that's how we are able to manage. So what it comes out to is that if you do the traditional lecture, you still cover the same amount of stuff. But in class, I tell you all the simple things you can do outside of class, and you go home and try to do the hard stuff. So it ends up taking you a lot longer on the back end, because you don't have a group to work through the difficult stuff with. When you come in with the same basic knowledge, you're going to come in here, and I'm going to set up an environment where you get to work with the harder questions, the challenging questions, and we're going to do that together in a group, and I'm going to help facilitate the learning of those skills. Okay? So I need your buy-in. I need you to complete the pre-class quizzes. I need you to tell me if I ever overstep and end up with way too much work before class. Every once in a while I do, because I can't always judge what it's like, because it's been a while since I learned this material. So let me know if you take it, if you're one of the first few students who take it, and you're like, this pre-class quiz took me like 2 hours to go and to read up on, or this doesn't seem relevant at all. Let me know that, and I can adjust things. Right? Then in class, we're going to do the harder stuff, and then every week you're going to have homework that you're going to get to practice the harder stuff that we did in class. So that's the big difference between the time in class and the time out of class. So the out of class, I'm going to have you focus on the basic content and the really basic skills. And then in class, we're going to be building on that. And we're going to be doing a lot of problem solving. We're going to be discussing, doing interactive learning, engaging with your peers, defending what it is that you think and why, going back to that set of skills that you decided, that you determined, dictated that we should be able to do by the end of this course. All right? In order for everyone to get a voice, I will be asking for people to volunteer their voice, but some people prefer not to share. But I still want you to participate. So the way that I do that is I have you use the iClicker app. So if you have not yet already done so, please download the iClicker Reef app. The little symbol looks like this. Or you can just create an account on your computer. If you have a computer, that's fine as well. Either way you create an account, you can access it through either a computer interface or a web-enabled phone or tablet or whatever those things are, whatever device you want. That's going to allow me to get every single person to respond to the question, so I can get an entire map of what it looks like. Sometimes I'll get 4 people that are super confident. Those are the only ones I hear from. If 95% of the class is lost, I'm not going to get that data if I only ask for verbal feedback. We're very fortunate this year in that iClicker is free to this campus, so it'll say 14-day trial or whatever. Don't buy. There is no need to buy it. This year it is free. It's usually $15 a semester. They're giving it to us for free because we're using it in a couple different ways and going to see if our campus wants to buy a site license. So that's good news for us. To do some of that outside reading and work, there's a platform that's made by a publisher called Pearson. And so I've sent out some emails about that. The bookstore just received the card today. Really what it comes down to is online homework, some sort of book is what I need you to have online homework. I'd like you to have some sort of book. This book, I think the hardback is like $250 or something insane. If you really like a hard copy of it, I would look for it used somewhere. The bookstore doesn't even carry them. They charge $150 or $180 for a loose leaf.
You can rent it for $30 on Amazon.
Boom. Do that. If you want to rent it. If you want to buy it, then you can go for the 7th edition, or you can probably find the 8th edition used. and I saw the 7th edition for like $15. So that should be fine. The only thing is the pages might not line up. I will argue, though, that there is a benefit of having the ebook. So if you have the online homework, everyone has online homework. If you want to link out, I don't understand this question, what do I do? Then you'll have to go to your book, try to find the page, and kind of go through it that way. If you do the online ebook, it maps directly from your homework into the ebook. It'll show you the exact page and section, and it'll lead you right to where you need to read some of those resources. So that is an argument for getting the two digital platforms together. That's what the bookstore sells. I think it's $120 for that combination. I know it's not cheap. The homework platform itself, I think, is $70 by itself. So I will leave that up to you. But I think you will be at a disadvantage if you don't have a book. I think the most advantageous, I would say, if you can afford it, is to do the ebook and the homework online. Any questions about those options? Yes.
With the Pearson's MyLab, can you just go to the Pearson's website and get this MyLab just right from the website? Do you have to go to the bookstore?
You can get rid of you don't need the bookstore, no.
So you just go
But
straight to their website?
don't go to the website. Go through Blackboard, because if you, I'm not 100% sure this is true, but they tell me that if you don't go through Blackboard your first time, it's much more difficult to link your grades. So your grades automatically import from MyLab Mastering back into Blackboard. So if you're just going to if you're going to pay for it out of pocket and you're not using financial aid, you have to go through the bookstore or whatever, then go in Blackboard, follow the instructions I sent today in an announcement, and it shows screen captures of where you need to go. And if you do that and click through that way, then it brings up the page, and there's a second screenshot that shows where the 14-day free trial is. Make sure you get in. First assignment's due Wednesday. So make sure you get in. There's a 14-day free trial. If you want to figure out how you're paying for it, that's fine. But there's an option there to use an access code if you bought it in the bookstore, or to buy the homework alone, or to buy the homework in the ebook. Okay? So you can do that by going through Blackboard. It'll give you four options. Access code, pay now, homework, and ebook, 14-day trial.
And you gave a link to it and everything.
Yep, so if you check out the Blackboard announcement, if you don't have your notifications turned on for Blackboard, I highly recommend you do so. If there's important things about class, that's how I notify the class. I will not send straight up emails. I will use Blackboard as my notification tool. All right. I will let your teaching assistants help describe lab. There is one digital platform there. It comes in an envelope when you buy the bookstore. I think you can do it not through the bookstore if you don't need to use financial aid. I think it's the same price, maybe a couple dollars cheaper. It's called LabFlow, so your TAs will talk to you about that. It's the same cost as what we used to give out in a binder and a paper, but it has a lot more functionality, a lot of videos, a lot of tutorials, that kind of stuff, so we're beefing that up. So there's a lot of platforms. If you have questions, when you have questions, please ask. Okay? Any quick questions for right now on these?
Do we need to have the lab manual or whatever before lab? Like, are we getting quiz?
Today we do not need it before lab, but next week we do. Is that correct? Anil? Okay. Great. I mentioned 2 of these 3 things in your online homework. By the way, this is the most I'll talk to you all semester. These 10 minutes here. So your online homework is worth 16% of your grade for the entire course. It's almost worth as much as lab. Lab's 25%. So that comes from every week you have pre-class quizzes before every class. So that means one before Monday class, one before Wednesday class. You're coming in with a certain baseline knowledge. If we don't do that, class time is much less efficient. Okay? So those 2 are worth the same as 1 homework. Both of these, maybe I'll fill it in. That's a wrong time, sorry. That's terrible. We're taking notes on this. So this is due at 5:30 p.m. Monday, Wednesday. All right, it's due half an hour before class starts. We have to class twice a week. You get full credit if in those 3 tries you figure it out and get it right. If you only get part of it right, you get partial credit. Right? So the 3 attempts are for you to know, okay, this is what I need to be able to do when I'm done studying. Or 100% the first time you're done. Yes?
Is this quiz on Blackboard or Pearson?
This is all within Pearson's mastering. And then your homework, It's typically about 2 hours worth of questions according to the average time the students take, which is, I have no idea how that correlates or maps to us. It depends on our background knowledge, but they have like this question should take this many minutes. So that's what I shoot for, is about 2 hours. So with an online homework, shoot for 3 hours with studying and then answering questions. Usually unlimited attempts. The only time that's not true is if there's a multiple choice question. If it's unlimited attempts and there's 5 answers, you can't just like click through all of them, so it's going to deduct partial credit each time you click through a multiple choice question. So just make sure you're more careful on those. And then the last part is completion. So wait, when do you actually have to get it right? That's here. The end of the week, if your homework's due Sunday night, you don't have to do it on Sunday. Actually, I prefer you don't do it on Sunday, right? You can do it all week after you go home from class. You can go work on it the day after, the day after. This I usually open on Saturday. And it's a subset of the homework questions. It's timed. So this coming week, I think you have 25 minutes to do it. It should probably take you 10 minutes or less. It likely will take you 10 minutes or less. It's just a few questions from here. If you practice here and you had no idea what you're doing, you're going to fail this. But if you practice here and you understood what you're doing, you're going to pass this with flying colors. Usually the average on these two is 95%, and this one's 75%. Yeah?
So the post quiz is always going to have to be done on the weekend?
It opens Saturday morning usually. I can change that if we need to, and it closes Monday night.
Oh, okay.
So it's open usually for 3 days. And it tells me if this person is getting 100%, 100%, and 20% on these on average, then I'm worried about that student because they think they know it, but then they don't when they go to this. So this should be a flag if you don't do well on this. If you're doing well on this and these, that's exactly where I want you. So this should tell you whether you need to come in for help in office hours, whether you need to change your study habits and those kinds of things. And that's where I come in. So I want to help when you don't feel like you're where you need to be. Yeah.
What do you mean it's based on performance versus based on completion?
So this one you get one take. That one take is timed, and whatever you submit at the end of that, if you get 72% right, you get a 72%. So it's the performance you have. It's not, you don't get another attempt at it. You won't see, I think you might see your percentage as soon as you take it, but you don't see the answers until the end of the day on Monday when everyone has turned it in. Do you think you can do this in groups? Is that cool? Don't do this in groups. This is an assessment of you. It's for you, but it's also for me. So this has to be done alone. You can use the resources that you think are reasonable. So if it's asking you to do something off the periodic table, you pull up the periodic table. But because it is timed, it's not going to give you a whole bunch of time to go out of this concept you really didn't understand in the homework. So make sure you get it in the homework. Yes?
You said the post quiz opens Saturday.
I have it usually set to open Saturday morning, close Monday night. I can change that if that is in conflict with people's schedules. But usually what I find is that students will finish the homework, work on it hopefully during the week, finish it over the weekend, and then on Monday they'll do the post-quiz and the pre-class quiz for the next class. But you can do things at different times than that. So if that timing is a conflict to you, please email me. Let me know what would be more helpful because I'm happy to be flexible on those. I don't want the post-quiz open the whole time the homework's open because then some students might take it and then tell their students like, oh yeah, this is, I don't know. I think it shouldn't be a problem. I don't know. I have some hesitation to doing that. All right, I think that's, dang it, not it. These are the tentative exam dates. They're in the top of the syllabus as well that I posted. Final exam is not a tentative date.
Oh.
Lucky us, first day. Yay. Done with it soon. But we only have 4 exams in this class. So we have the first one after about 3 weeks. And then I think we have about 4 weeks, and then 3 weeks, and then 3 weeks of class. So it's about every 3 weeks. What can happen sometimes is that students will feel like they're doing okay. Hopefully the online homework will let you know if you're struggling. We don't want the first exam to be the first time that you're like, ooh, maybe I need to change something. We want to try to do it before that. So pay close attention to how you're doing on the post quizzes. If you feel like you're falling a little bit behind, come see me, come to office hours, we'll figure it out. I will be sending out a poll to figure out when office hours should be. I don't know your schedules. I know a lot of you work, you have families. It's very difficult to find 2 or 3 times throughout the week when everyone is available, but I will try to do that as best as I can based off of your results to the poll. And then based off of that poll, if I select these 3 times throughout the week and you can't make any of those, I'm available by appointment as well. So just feel free to email me, say these are some times. I typically like to do office hours with at least 2 students. That way it's not like a one-on-one tutoring session where some students feel they're being disadvantaged because I'm private tutoring a student. So if it's catch up on concepts, if there's a peer of yours in class that's also available then, that would be fantastic. Or if there's a time that you would like, sometimes I ask your peers, the whole class, would this work as well? Then we might do an impromptu office hour then as well. All right, and I mentioned earlier, Blackboard is where I'm going to post our office hours. That's where I post most of the discussions that I have. And if you have a generic question, post it in Blackboard discussions. Your peers might be able to answer it before I do. Your TAs will help answer it because they're going to be added to the course. And I'll answer it as soon as I can. I don't want to answer the same question 60 times, so if I made a mistake and you want to bring it up, or if there's a scheduling thing, or if there's a concept, then that's a great place to post it and we can all work from there. I think that's the logistics. All right. If you have more logistic questions, then that's stuff that we can ask on Blackboard. So now, everybody please log into your Clicker account. We're going to spend the last 15 minutes of class focusing on one of the most basic skills we use in chemistry. It's called dimensional analysis or unit conversion. You can click in your answer, but as I walk around and the team walks around, what we want to see is how did you solve this? So please write out your approach to solving this question so that the team can kind of help look at this, and we're going to use this to get everyone on the same page and start using one particular approach, and we'll get a lot of practice on that. Once you have an answer, make sure you put the number in and then hit send. If you don't hit send, it doesn't come. And if your app looks frozen, just quit.
I'm not here.
Well, then why don't you come?
That's all it's doing.
Yeah, so for now, don't worry.
Okay. I don't have to do it.
Actually, you're
Yeah.
maybe try that. It might be just frozen, dear. Unclick her. There you go. It just was frozen. Thank you.
So if you're having trouble with location services, if you have a second device, log into that for now, like a computer versus a tablet. What we'll do at the beginning of each class is we'll make sure everyone's able to check in. If you aren't, notify me. I'll turn off location services, you'll check in, and I'll turn location services back on. Does that make sense? So we'll kind of like skirt the system. The reason I do that is I've been burned in the past. I didn't used to do location services at all, but then I had students checking in from home, and then just like clicking whatever, and I'd get random responses, and it threw everything off, and so I just, I had to put that barrier up, which kind of is frustrating, but it's what I do now. So, let's talk through, well, let's take a look at our answers first. We have 20 responses. $25. Hopefully one of the things you notice is that it shows up on your screen of your device, the screenshot, and you can pinch and zoom if it's too small to see, if it's on your phone or your iPad or tablet, so that makes it easier to see. So I want to walk through the reasons why we can do this first. So if we have 5 squares equals 1 triangle, then what happens if we divide both sides by 1 triangle? What does that change into? Almost. So on the left side, we have 5 squares over triangle equals 1. Mathematically, why is that useful? What happens when we multiply something by 1? It stays the same, it doesn't change, right? So that means if we multiply anything by 1, it doesn't change. The value stays the same. If we multiply anything by 5 squares over 1 triangle, that's equal to 1, so that means it doesn't change. Following my logic? So that means that if something were to have squares in it, or triangles, then we could multiply by this, and if the same symbol was on the top and the bottom, we could use that to convert from one unit to the other. What if we did the other way around instead? So if we divided by both sides by 5 squares, then we'd have 1 equals triangle over 5 squares. Any questions about how I got this relationship? Yeah, how did I get this one? So I did the same, you can either flip it and it still equals 1. Or you could say I took this equality, these two things are equal, and I divided it both sides by 5 squares. If I divide this by 5 squares, it's 1. If I divide triangle by 5 squares, it's triangle divided by 5 squares. Okay. I know this looks really stupid and simple, but I'm trying to prove a point by using shapes and not having us think about units at all. The shapes are going to become units in chemistry. That's what we spend a lot of our time focusing on. So that means if I take anything and I multiply it by this, I'm going to get the same number, same quantity, but it's going to be in triangles instead of squares. So let's do that at the bottom. So then I'm going to say, what's our starting quantity in this question here? What are we starting with? What's that? 10 squares? So we have 10 squares, and what I'm going to ask for the first couple weeks of this class is that you play along and you use my approach. My approach, chemistry approach, whatever you're going to call it. So this is called dimensional analysis, and we're going to take the starting quantity. The first step is always, what is the starting quantity? Okay, in this case, we're going to identify 10 squares as starting quantity, and we're going to put that over 1. That way we know it's on the top of a fraction. And then we're going to take a conversion factor. This is a conversion factor. This is a conversion factor. And we're going to use that to convert from this unit of squares to another unit. So which of the two am I going to use? The left conversion factor or the right conversion factor? So let's try. Let's use the left one. So now what happens when I multiply across the top, multiply across the bottom? So if I do this, I have 10 times 5 is 50 squares times squares. That didn't help me change the units, right? Over triangle. That doesn't work. So let's instead use this one. Triangle. So that means for every one triangle, that's equal to 5 squares. So if we take this 10 squares over 1, multiply it by this conversion factor, we now, well, let me write it out first so we can see exactly how we did that. So on the top, we're going to have 10 squares times 1 triangle over 5 squares. Because we have the same unit on the top and the bottom, it's all multiplication, we can now cross those out. The other way to show that is just by saying that I see it's on the top and the bottom here, and so I can cancel those out mathematically. Doesn't matter which one of these we use because they're both equal to 1, but it does matter as far as having the units cancel out. They won't cancel out unless we have it on the top and the bottom. So you might have been taught dimensional analysis or unit conversion in the past, but just saying cancel things out. I'm really not focused on canceling things out. I'm used to using this to convert the number of squares to the number of triangles. Okay, so let's go ahead and, does that answer the question that was asked at the beginning? Question is, how many stars is it? Well, if I finish this calculation now, I know that I have 10 squares is equal to 2 triangles. So then how do I get from triangles to stars? What are you thinking? Back there in the corner? In the maroon, the glasses? You were pointing up here. Did you want to add something? Okay, so I'm going to ask you, can you write the next step? So what would I write there next to it? Almost, not quite though. So what we want to do is that's what we need to use, but how do we use that to convert from the number of triangles to the number of stars? Multiply by what? So if we look at the approach that we did here, if we have an equality, that means we can have this ratio equal to 1. We can multiply anything by that. So what are the two ratios that we get out of this equality up here that are equal to 1? That's 1. That equals 1, right? Because this divided by itself is 1, then it equals, the other option then is 3 stars over 2 triangles. That both of these are equal to 1. Because we know that these two things are equal to each other, we can take and divide one side by itself, which gives us this one, or we divide the left side by 3 stars, and it gives us this one. Both of those are equal to 1. So it's a mathematical way of saying that if I know two things are equal, I can use the ratio of them to convert. If I know how many triangles I have, I know I can figure out the number of stars. If I know how many stars I have, I can figure out how many triangles. It's just a matter of selecting which version of that conversion factor to use. So then what would I put down here? What would I put as the next step?
The 3 star over the 2 triangle.
Okay, so what happens? Does that work out? So we have a triangle on top, triangle on the bottom. Those units will cancel out. Does the 2 cancel out? Nope. That number's there. It's 2 of the triangles for every 3 stars. So then, how do we get an answer here? Multiply straight across the top. So I'm going to change the black here. So across the top we have 30, and the only unit we have left is stars. And on the bottom we have 5 times 2, 10. Any units? Nope, no units. Can we simplify that answer? All right. So we're going to work on this a couple of times. and maybe not in the next minute, I'll put up the next problem. You're welcome to take a screenshot of this next problem. And then you can try working this on your own. And if you want, I'll stay after class and we can work through it individually. So here's our next version of this problem. We're going to start off next class. There is some pre-class reading on this approach to solving problems. You want me to, you want me to make it a clicker question? Okay, I can make it a clicker question so it shows up on your phone. You can take a screenshot. Let's have everyone in the room submit an answer. That way you'll have submitted an answer for this question. Yeah, just that way I have 2 responses from everyone. Okay, I can work with y'all. I don't think today's participation is actually going to count towards the semester, but sometimes people are like really scared if they say that, oh, I didn't get to participate in all the days. So don't stress, today will not count towards your total participation. We're just getting up and running. But if you wanted to take a picture of this and try it on your own using the approach I just talked about, your homework will help guide you with that. For Wednesday, it's about using unit conversion. We'll spend Wednesday and next Monday's class on this. So it's an approach that is fundamental to chemistry. And we are now at 7:15. Class is dismissed. Thank you so much. It was really nice meeting you. I look forward to getting to know you the rest of the semester.